Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin, the show where I virtually invite people into the Blog Cabin to chat about life. And today we are chatting about mentorship, being a mentor, being a mentee with Dr. Deborah. Loved having you on. Loved your book, The Mentor Project. So please tell us a little about yourself before we start talking about what mentorship is and about the book.
Well, thank you for having me on. My name is Deborah Heiser. I'm an applied developmental psychologist. I founded the Mentor Project and I wrote the Mentorship Edge. And I have been writing about and studying aging from midlife on for many years. And I was delighted to find out how mentorship intersects with that.
So why did you decide to talk about mentorship? Because a lot of people are like, they're like, oh, it's just something people like, they find somebody they admire and they look up to and they see if they can be a mentor. Why did you decide to write about it? And why did it kind of call to you?
It called to me because as an aging specialist, I was studying everything no one wants to have or get, everything that makes a person afraid of growing older. And somewhere along the line, someone said to me, well, what do we have to expect that's good? What do we have to look forward to? And I took a step back and I started to look at our developmental trajectory. And within that is a midlife stage called generativity. And we're built to want to give back to others without expecting anything in return. So all the bloggers out there, all the people with podcasts doing that, that's generativity. We're just kind of called to do it. It's an itch that we want to scratch. And within that is mentorship, where we want a piece of ourselves to be living in someone else. It's a form of immortality. But most of us don't think of it that way. We think of mentorship from the mentee perspective. And the mentor is a nameless, faceless individual out there that we're just kind of grabbing and running away with information or skill or promotion or whatever it is. And I wanted to highlight what it really is, where it came from, and where we can get it in our everyday lives. So that's really where it came from, was me looking at it from an aging perspective.
Now, in your book, you talk of the mentorship edge. You talk about what mentoring is and isn't. So let's talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about what it isn't.
So mentorship is something that is generative, where we want to give a little bit of ourselves to somebody else, which is different than, some of us think that it's networking or that it's coaching or it's something like that. But it comes from within us. We want to give this. And when I say this, it doesn't have to be career. Religion is passed down through generations, culture, values, all of those things within families are often mentorship. So that's the first thing. Second is it has to be intrinsically motivated. If you're getting paid to do it, you're not mentoring. So that right away gets rid of coaches and other people who are out there who are looking for reciprocity or money in exchange. You have to have a meaningful connection. So all the bloggers and all of the podcasters who have people who listen over and over, read over and over again, there's a meaningful connection, at least one-sided with that. There has to be trust. If you don't trust the person that you're in a relationship with, there's not going to be mentoring. And there has to be a goal. So that's what exchanges this out of the friendship role, is that there's a goal there. So if you have all of those things, that's what mentorship is. If you're getting paid, you're not a mentor. If you're expecting something from the other person, that's not mentoring. That's, looking for reciprocity. That's networking. That's something else. So if we divide it into what it is, and it's easy then to see what it isn't. I hope that's helpful.
Love I just went blank. Love the comparison that you made with the Starbucks, with people going to serve the community and like serving coffee and then going to work at Starbucks, and how they were like, they didn't see Starbucks as a way of mentoring people, but yet if they go out and they give their services for free, all of a sudden light bulbs, oh, we're mentoring people, we're doing something good. And whereas Starbucks, you're getting paid to do it, so you don't think about it like that.
Exactly. So I like everybody else, love to give back, right? And we all think of this as something normal. So if I said to you, hey, Melissa, would you like to give back your time at a soup kitchen? You might say, yes, sure.
Mhm.
And we'd feel delighted to do it because we feel good when we help others or make others feel good. Now, if I called you on your way to the soup kitchen, I said, Melissa, turn left, and I want you to donate your time instead to Starbucks for the day, where you're giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people. But this time you're doing it for no pay, where everyone else around you is getting paid. That is a different feel, doing the same exact work. And so that's where intrinsic motivation is the part that most people think, what, I don't see the importance of that. But it really makes a difference, because I don't think that I could wrangle anybody to donate their time to Starbucks for an afternoon, but I could to a soup kitchen.
Yeah. Let's talk about the mentorship project, because I think that is a huge, huge undertaking that you went under, and then COVID hit, and then everything was on Zoom, and I loved it. I loved the fact that you could go back and they could trace like where they helped their mentee and their mentee helped someone else, and then the connections, and I love that. So let's talk project.
Sure. So the mentor project was something that was just started because I was talking to so many people about mentorship. I was working in the aging field, and I was looking for what is it that people look forward to. And somebody talked about how good they feel when they mentor. So then I said, well, I want to talk to other mentors. So I was talking to four-star generals and grandmas and all these people. And one of the people I spoke with was Bill Cheswick. And he's one of the fathers of the network firewall, which is how we all get to communicate nowadays safely. And he said, I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm going to be living on a farm, and I'm going to become irrelevant, useless. And he was so devastated by this. Most people think, yay, retirement. And he was saying, oh my gosh, everything I've ever done is going to get forgotten. And so therefore I will be a meaningless individual. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to get you into schools, but good luck, Bill. And then I had heard from somebody who said, hey, I think that we could maybe get some mentoring in schools. So I called Bill and said, are you in? And he said, I'm in. So about 7 of us got together to see if we could just get mentoring in schools. And we did. And everybody along the way was saying, what a dumb idea. No one else is ever going to want to do it. It's just you 7 who are interested in this. And then COVID hit, and we went from 10 people to 60 within a couple of months, and then to 80, and then to 100 by the end of the year. And we were on Zoom, and we impacted about 100,000 students within that first year. And we had a waiting list of people who wanted to join the Mentor Project. We have astronauts, and we have all kinds of interesting individuals across the board who've done world-changing things. So I am no longer running it. I'm still a founder, but it was 8 years of me running it, and somebody else is running it now. But unbelievable, the impact that people can make for absolutely no money to change the world. So just last year, the Mentor Project was able to give more than $3.5 million worth of mentorship hours in less than 12 months to people in 5 countries, to mentees in 5 countries. So the impact is only going to grow. It's only going to get bigger. And the mentors are delighted to stay on year after year after year. So it's one of those things that the Mentor Project wasn't something thought out. It wasn't, something that we thought, oh, let's try this. It became an organic journey that we just couldn't stop. I finally said, oh, I've put in a lot of time. I want to go try something new. And nobody wanted it to end. So somebody else took it over and is running it now. But and I'm still involved, but not in the way I was. But unbelievable how we're built to want to give. And it just showed that.
Yeah, and to think that so many people with all these expertise, like you mentioned in the book, like you have someone like Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak, how they were mutually helping each other, and they built Apple. And you think about how the internet is now. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet. We had to, like you said, we had to look up things in encyclopedias and do our book reports from encyclopedias, or do spend time in the library. But now we can just go online and actually interact with people and be mentors to people like that. Our
Yes.
mentees. I love that. I love the fact that you're using COVID, number one, something that people thought was going to be all bad turn something great. And also too, how you're using the power of the internet to get into front of more people so that people that may not have had the access to mentors in real life can find mentors online. And I love that.
It's so exciting to me to see how small the world is. That, our mentors were connecting with students in Sharadi, Tanzania, in India, in Argentina, in Mexico, all over the world. And the other really interesting thing was we found that our mentors were mentoring each other from all
Mm.
over the world. So our mentors weren't in one location. We're a global company. The main thing was our mentors were getting on Fridays to meet with each other, and people started writing books together. They started to form companies together, do other things together because, they had such diverse backgrounds. And once you get people conversing that have nothing in common,
Mm.
they find something in common. And that was the beauty of it. And that's lateral mentoring, is taking two people like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and the founding fathers of the United States and anyone else who's an entrepreneur. None of us does anything alone, but we forget that the people who helped us were mentoring us. They weren't expecting pay.
Now, you mentioned lateral mentoring. There's also other forms of mentoring. Do you want to go into that?
Sure, there's peer mentoring. We see that in schools where people are assigned, a peer who knows something, and it'll often be in a classroom. It can be, you can see that in a university sometimes. You can also see that in a variety of different settings, but it's usually very structured. And it's about one thing, that the mentorship is taking place with one specific goal in mind. And it's usually not the student, the person that's looking for the mentorship, that is setting that goal. We also have reverse mentoring. It's where somebody who's younger is or more junior is mentoring somebody more senior or older. So an example of that is I have a 21-year-old mentor. I'm 57, and he is a social media influencer.
Mm.
And so he's been teaching me how to go on TikTok. And it's not the tech I needed, it was the culture and the language. I was
Mhm.
called an unk, which means, I'm old on TikTok. And so I've been learning the culture from him. So we see that the very first person to really talk about reverse mentoring was Jack Welch, when he introduced it so that his senior employees could learn how to do email in the 90s. And so hierarchical mentoring is one form. That's the one that when we talk about mentoring, that's the one that most people are thinking about and talking about. That's where you hear about somebody who's more senior in a company or in a job, and they're mentoring somebody more junior to bring them up. Hierarchical mentoring is a grandma who's passing down the generations of traditions and values in the home or the religion through the family. And then there's lateral mentoring, which is looking to your left and looking to your right and finding somebody who is able to help you with whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're starting a company, that you're going to look to your left or your right, and you're going to find a Steve Wozniak, or you're going to find somebody else who's going to help you. And most of our mentorship does not happen in the workplace. It happens in life. We'll never remember in 300 years Bob the accountant, but we will remember our religion. We'll remember the family values that we passed down. We'll remember those kinds of things that matter to us. And those are oftentimes through lateral mentors and hierarchical mentors.
That is so true, and I love the one example that you said about the young man who was a comedic writer, and he wanted to write, and he just couldn't sell his jokes, couldn't sell, and now he was writing for Saturday Night Live, and he helped mentor somebody else because he got in touch with somebody who could mentor him, and then it went on and on and on.
Yeah, so that was Alan Zweibel. And so if you watch the SNL movie, he was the first comedy writer for Saturday Night Live. He was a guy who wanted to be a comedy writer. He was having a tough time selling his jokes, but he was doing it, and he got discovered. And he ended up mentoring Judd Apatow, who's now super famous. He drove, I think, from New Jersey in a snowstorm to a school in Long Island, New York, to be on a radio show of some high school student, which happened to be Judd Apatow. So what happened in the end was he mentored him for years as he was getting started in his career and still deciding if he wanted to be a comedy writer. And now they're lateral mentors to each other. Judd now helps Alan from time to time. So it was really cool to see that come full circle. And Judd has written about it, and so has Alan in both of their books.
So I love that so much. Well, we need to take a brief break, but we'll be right back.
People welcomed me and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substance.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling. They understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
In a world full of chaos, she chose to anchor her story in hope. Through storms and silence, she found strength. And now, she's inviting you to do the same. This isn't just a book, it's a lifeline. For every woman who's ever felt unseen, your healing begins here. Anchored in Hope, available now.
And we are back with Deborah, and she wrote the Mentorship Edge. So, Deborah, the floor is all yours. I would love for you to read part of your book.
I'd love to. I'd love to start with, or just read a little bit, if I can, about coaching is not mentoring, because so many people think that coaching and mentoring are the same. They'll say, I'm a coach, therefore I'm a mentor. And that's just not true. So I'll read a little bit of that if that's okay.
Go for it.
All right. Coaching is focused on achieving specific goals or outcomes. A coach's approach is structured and goal-oriented. A coach works with an individual, coachee, to help them achieve a specific personal or professional goal and is generally explicitly hired for that purpose. They have expertise in methodologies for working with clients in various areas, such as leadership development, career transition, and personal growth and sports. Marshall Goldsmith is one of the world's top-ranking executive coaches. He developed the stakeholder-centered coaching method, a structured process that focuses on improving an individual's performance and leadership abilities within an organization. His method helps leaders achieve positive, long-term, measurable changes in behavior. In his long and successful career, he's coached notable leaders, including Alan Mulally at Boeing, J.P. Garnier at GlaxoSmithKline, as well as other CEOs and senior executives at major companies. His work focuses on feedback and guidance based on confidential 360-degree feedback from colleagues and sometimes friends and family. This is a proactive method that involves setting specific goals and skills in the service of improving. The feedback is used to further these improvements and gain insight to develop leadership skills and reach predetermined goals. Coaching is often mistaken for mentoring. I recently gave a talk to a group of more than 100 coaches on mentoring. Many of the coaches said coaching is mentoring. I asked if they would continue working with their clients if they were not getting paid. The answer was an emphatic no. I asked if they, the coach, benefited in any way from the coaching experience outside of getting paid. I asked whether the coach's success was a legacy for the coach. Did the coaching make them feel they would be willing to help and care about their coachees' outcomes without expecting anything in return from them? For each question, the answer again was almost always no. Mentoring differs from coaching in that mentoring pulls from intrinsic motivation, personal wisdom, and expertise. Mentoring is not a structured, standardized interaction between individuals. There is a personal connection that drives the relationship forward that does not necessarily focus on measurable changes in behavior, but rather provides support and guidance. An analogy I use is that mentoring opens doors for the mentee, whereas coaching is focused on getting the coachee to open the door themselves. Marshall Goldsmith agrees. Coaching and mentoring are both valuable tools for personal and professional development, but they serve different purposes and are structured differently. Guiding, opening doors, and providing insight do not always equal mentorship. We all engage with others, often in meaningful ways. We also engage laterally But coaching is a hierarchical only method of interaction between coach and coachee. Mentoring often involves mentors who are not in a vertical relationship, but are seen as equals with differing areas of expertise. When coaches mistake coaching for mentoring, they rarely see mentoring as complex. Mentoring is a web of connections rather than a superhighway. Our motivation for connecting with others matters. Are we connecting to get ahead? Are we connecting to get paid? Are we connecting because we want to pass on our knowledge and leave a legacy? The outcomes we seek for ourselves matter. It is vitally important that we look at the 5 key components of mentoring to determine whether or not we are mentoring, the criteria for mentoring. Sometimes it may look or feel like mentoring, but it may be something else. While advising, sponsoring, networking, coaching are all valuable practices in their own right, they are distinct from mentoring. It's crucial to leverage each of these practices to their fullest potential. However, we must also recognize and separate them from mentoring and from each other to avoid missing out on the unique benefits that mentoring offers. True mentoring enables mentors to share their insights and ideas with mentees in a way that sparks transformative change. By embracing the distinctiveness of mentoring, we unlock its power to ignite meaningful growth and development. We've demystified what mentoring isn't. Now let's unravel a deeper question. Why do we mentor?
I love that. That's a great question. Why do we mentor? That is such a great question. So why do you think people think that mentoring is coaching though? Because a lot of people like, I have a great mentor. Like just for instance, today, one of the people that I follow said, oh, I just started a mentoring project, a mentoring program where you can come and I can mentor you about social media and stuff, but yet they won't pay for it. So that's not really mentoring.
No, that's coaching. So most people, the term mentoring is much more palatable to people. It feels welcoming. It feels altruistic. But if you're asking for money, that's not altruism. And so I think that it's very important for a person to hear it in their mind. There's a red flag in a way. If you hear something that has dollar signs on it, label it for what it is. There's nothing wrong with coaching, but it's not mentoring. What happens is if a person thinks that they're getting mentorship when they're getting coaching, they won't seek mentorship. If they know they're getting coached, they'll still seek mentorship. And you should have one coach for something, but you should have as many mentors as you possibly can for whatever you're doing. If I were playing a sport and I had a coach and then I said, I'm going to get a few coaches, it's going to be a mess out on the field. But if I ask for mentorship in maybe getting ahead and doing something that I enjoy doing, maybe it's podcasting, maybe it's writing a blog, maybe it's writing a book, I want several mentors, somebody who can help me with the tone, somebody who can help me with the way that maybe the visualization of it is. Mentors are there for very small tasks. A goal can be teeny tiny, a one-off, or it could be that you're there with somebody for years and years. And we think that mentoring often has to be a relationship like a coaching one, where it's for a set amount of time. You meet every Friday at 1 o'clock. You do something very specific and it's structured, but it's not. That's where the difference is.
And then let's talk about networking, because a lot of people think that networking is mentoring as well. Networking is a way that you can find a mentor or mentee, but it's not necessarily mentoring.
Right. And you said it perfectly. So networking is where you could go and get your virtual contact list completely filled with potential mentors. But networking is there for reciprocity. You are there to help somebody and they're there to help you. Nobody's walking in saying, hi, I'm here to mentor. There's usually a goal attached to it, like help me get a job, help me further my contact list so that I can benefit something in some way. There's not a deepness there or meaningfulness there. Now that can develop. You could go into a networking event, and I have done this, where I come away with one person and I say, wow, that is a great, meaningful connection. I bet I can get mentored later on by that person, or I bet I can mentor that person. So that's where you can look at networking for what it really is.
So why did you decide? One of the things that you talk about in the book is you have to be vulnerable when you're going into the mentor or mentee relationship. And a lot of people don't want that to be vulnerable. They don't like being vulnerable. They don't like putting all their stuff out on for the whole world to see or for that person to see. They kind of like build a facade. So why is that so important?
It's important because if you don't, someone can't help you. And if you don't trust someone, so let's just pretend that I'm going to get it. You're 2 levels above me at work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Melissa's so smart. She's so amazing. I'm so intimidated by her. I don't want to tell her what I don't know because she might not give me a raise or think that I'm an amazing person. They'll only see me for the things I don't know. I want to, that old term, dress not for the job that you have, but the one you want. We're told to put armor on in terms of, don't tell anybody what you don't know. Let them think that you are somebody who's going to be absolutely invincible and indisposable. So it makes it difficult for us to show our vulnerability. Likewise, imagine you were 2 levels above me and you thought, gee, I don't know that I want to, really tell Deborah very much because she might run off with my idea and go start her own something else, or take my idea and then claim it as her own and go make a way for herself. So if you don't trust me as the mentee, that's not going to work. So we're built to have that in us where we have to protect ourselves. We're sort of taught to do that. We're trained to do that. Build your brand. It doesn't build a community. These are the things that we're taught. So that's where, if you look at lateral mentoring, you are automatically not vulnerable around lateral mentors. You either know them already and they know what you know and don't know, and they like you and they don't care that you don't know absolutely everything, because no one does. Or the person's in a different department and they're not in any kind of way, shape, or form going to have any impact on your job. And you're not taking anything from them either. When we look at lateral mentorship, this is where we can really thrive. And people overlook this as the biggest opportunity. If you have a bunch of people to your left and to your right at work, you are going to be able to go much higher because those guys are helping you out along the way. And that's a different way to go up without having the feeling of, I better not show my vulnerabilities. You can be as vulnerable as you want that way.
Yeah, and you bringing up the example again with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Steve Jobs was struggling in his career, and his boss was telling him how to do something, and he couldn't do it. And then he reached out to his friend and said, "Hey, can you help me?" And there goes the story.
Yes. And how often does that happen? I tell that story without telling people who it is. And every time they're completely surprised, because Steve Jobs was at his job and his boss came and said, I have an impossible task for you to accomplish in an impossibly short amount of time. And if it doesn't work out, the company's going to go under and you're not going to have a job. That's pressure.
Yeah.
So Steve was like, I'm not going to tell him I don't know what I'm doing. That's the last thing I'm going to do. And so what he did was he called his friend Steve. And Steve said, I'll come over after work and help you. And it was like Rumpelstiltskin at night, wheat was getting weaved into gold. And the boss came in and was like, wow, Steve, this is great. And Steve was like, I told you I had it. And then the job got finished early. And it turned out that the boss was Al Alcorn at Atari. It was Steve Jobs who was given this task, and Steve Wozniak who came in, and it was Breakout, the first video game that was made by Atari that became, if you play video games now, thank them, because that's what happened. It couldn't have happened without Steve Wozniak, and it couldn't have happened without Steve Jobs. It wasn't like Steve Wozniak came and did Steve's job. He wove in his own knowledge into what Steve Jobs already knew. Nothing could have happened without either of them. And that's what lateral mentoring is. So, and friends, how often have you ever called a friend and said, oh my gosh, I'm so stuck? And you tell your friend all of your hardships, and you're not, feeling bad about telling them that at all, because your friend's going to be like, how can I help you? That's what lateral mentoring is like and feels like for people.
Why is it that we're okay to reach out to our friends when we're struggling, but when as far as personal, but when it comes to career-wise, we're not okay to reach out and say, hey, this is what's going on. Help me.
I think that people think that their job is their job. It's like they go off and they're a different person. When people say, oh, be authentic, be yourself, you're really not at work. My authentic self would be to lay in bed and, wear sweatpants. I'm not my authentic self when I go to work. And you don't want to see me being my authentic self. Like nobody wants that. So we have this armor on at work. And we think of work as I do this at work. I have these lanes, I stay in them. And we don't even think of our friends as people to help us. We don't think of the people that we meet at networking places as mentors. We think of people to hire. We think of people to help out to get a job, but not to, actually help us. And Latanya Kilpatrick said it really well. And I wrote about her in the book. She went to a conference and she was the director at Colgate Palmolive. And she went to a conference and somebody worked in a dog food division. Now, that has nothing to do with oral health at Colgate, but she couldn't solve a problem. Her whole team was having a rough patch and couldn't solve a problem. So she turned to the person and called her and said, I know that you work with gut health with dogs, but do you think there's anything in that could translate to humans? And she said, let me look. And so Latanya met, and this woman taught her about everything that she was doing with dog gut health. And it translated, and they made a huge breakthrough in oral health for humans. That's lateral mentorship. So she did feel like she could reach out to somebody, but oftentimes a person wouldn't. They would say to themselves, I don't want to show my vulnerabilities to that person I met at the conference. I want them to think that I am it. I am, everything out there. And I want to show myself as being amazing. However, what that did was now they're aligned. Now they both feel pretty close and they can ask things back and forth. So had she not reached out to her, she wouldn't have solved her problem. And now that person really knows how amazing she is because she was able to turn something that wasn't working into something enormous that was a global impact. So, and she gets to feel a part of it. So who doesn't like that? So that's really what it's all about. It's the connections that we make and the feeling, allowing ourselves to feel vulnerable where we feel we can. I don't advocate to somebody to go to your boss and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't say, go do that. Go tell everybody I stink in this, but go to the safe places that you know, because even if that person doesn't know it, I bet they know somebody who does.
That's true. Now, let's talk about how we can be a mentor and how we can find a mentor.
So it's easy. First of all, we're doing it all the time and we just don't know it. Here you are, a podcaster and a blogger, you're mentoring, right? You have dedicated people who are following you and are meaningfully connected to you. Is that as connected as if you were connected individually with them? It's a weaker mentoring connection, but it's still there. So if you're engaged in that way, you're mentoring. How can you find someone in your regular everyday life? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If it's that you're looking for family values, look to someone in your family. Every Thanksgiving, I make the same holiday meal, exact, that my grandmother made, to the point that, I have the cards that she wrote it out in her handwriting, to the point that, I had an uncle visit and he became emotional because he said, it's my childhood. He had been eating his wife's Thanksgiving. If you have things that matter to you, your relatives are your mentors, the people that are passing down whatever value it is that you like, the traditions, the religion, whatever it is, look there. If you are looking for, so that's personal meaning. If you're looking for personal meaning in your life, look to your friends, the people that you know, the places that you're involved with, and you're going to find somebody who's going to be able to mentor you to get to where you want to go. If it's at work, think to yourself, where can I meet people that is not awkward? That's at the water cooler or whatever that water cooler is. If you're working virtually, that means those meetings on Zoom. You can start chatting with people behind, the whole conversation that's happening and start saying, hey, I love what you do. Can you and I grab coffee at some point? I'd love to pick your brain. It's as easy as that. So wherever you are, that you have a goal that you'd like to meet, find out, look around and say, who do I know that might be connected to that in some way? And then you can ask a question that isn't, will you be my mentor? But can I pick your brain? Start with a very small, doable ask. I tell people who start at new companies, ask for the lay of the land from someone, because that's an easy ask. And then you can find out, do I like this person? Do I feel like I can ask for something else? And you can start small. Every doable ask is something that's going to make it further, or you can say, not a mentor for me.
I love that, how you said ask small, because then you're not you don't feel, number one, disappointed if you find, oh, that person's supposed to be a mentor to me, but they're not really mentoring me. They're
Yeah.
not really adding anything. They're actually making me feel more upset or more uptight about what the goal that I want to do, or make me discouraged about my goal. So I love the fact that you said start small instead of coming straight out and say, hey, will you be my mentor? It's more like, hey, can I pick your brain? Let's go have coffee or something and have a simple conversation. Whereas a lot of people, I think, miss that step and they jump right into, okay, I need a mentor. Will you be my mentor? And most of the time they get disappointed or get discouraged because they're not living up to what they think they're supposed to be working in the mentor relationship. Like they're disappointed their goals aren't being met and everything else.
It's putting a lot on the mentor, the potential mentor, because when we say, I'd like a mentor, what do you mean by that? What are you looking for? And I've had this a lot of times where I'll say to somebody, will say, will you be my mentor? And I'll say, well, what would you like me to mentor you in? Do you have a goal? What are you looking for? And when they don't know, I say, come back to me when you know, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you, because I can't fill their cup. You're asking me to do something that I don't even know what I'm doing. If you want somebody to just have a conversation with, shadow, pick my brain, ask me about the journey that I'm on, whatever it is, I can do that. But if you say, I just want mentorship, and you don't have a question or a goal, that's a burden on me, because I feel like I might not be able to fulfill that. And so the mentee has an actual job, and their job is just simply to say, here's what I'd like. And if you don't know what you want, which is a lot of us, say to yourself, okay, I know that I'm here. I don't have a specific goal yet. What's the first thing I'd like to know? Well, maybe I'd like to know a little bit about this person and how they got there. Maybe that'll help me. Maybe that'll, put a seed out there.
Mhm.
So I could say to somebody, I'd really like to talk with you and learn how you became a podcaster. Can you tell me your journey? And most people will say, sure. And you can meet with them. And then you could say, do I have more questions? Is there something else? And it doesn't mean that you're out of the mentoring. If you say to yourself, it's going to take me a month to come back to this person, that's okay. Mentorship doesn't have a time frame on it. It's not like coaching where you say, okay, now we're going to meet every Friday. That feels like a burden for both people oftentimes. So that's a person that you put a pin in it. And then you go to somebody else and you say, hey, can I pick your brain about something else? Really what you're doing is you're throwing out breadcrumbs all over the place that when you really have your ask, you know who to go to.
Yeah. And the thing you've hit on is you have to have a goal. That's important. So how do we go about finding the goal that we want?
That's oftentimes hard for us, especially if we're starting out. I have two kids who are in college getting ready to, one's getting ready to graduate this year and the other one's a year behind him. And how do you know when you're young what you want to do with the rest of your life? And how do you even know the first question to ask? So the thing I say is, what do you like? And what is it that you would want to do? And then reach out to somebody that even has. So what I've told, say, for example, my kids to do is to talk to people who are in fields that they might be interested. And the greatest thing is they've said, I'm going to have a conversation. They've said, I don't want to do that. Well, that's huge. That's mentoring. Getting out of something is just as important as going into something. So that right there was accomplishing a goal, was to see how interested I am. One of my kids went level after level after level down a route that we didn't think he was going to go down. He's going down a different path towards a job that we didn't think he was going to go down, but he just kept liking it and kept getting mentored by somebody. So you can have one that says, I'm going to fall off. This isn't what I want to do. Now I'll go pick a new path and pick a brain here, pick a brain there. And then that can often lead to long-term mentoring when you find the person where you don't have to say, what is my goal?
And plus too, I want to add there, you just talked about how you just said one of your children said, oh, I don't want to do that. But also a mentor, the way they respond to you can also encourage or discourage a mentee as well. Like if they respond in such a negative way about maybe the job they're in or something else, people might say, ooh, maybe I don't want to do this. Or they make them feel discouraged about themselves, or you're not up to where you need to be, but gives you steps and give them criticism in such a way that it's positive criticism instead of negative criticism.
I love that you brought that up, because so many people say, oh, I have a toxic mentor. And I say, That's not a mentor. You have a toxic person you're talking to. Stop talking to them. Run away. It's like saying, I have a friend who's mean to me every time we get together. They're not your friend. And we often think that because we put a label on that person that's mean to us or criticizes us or doesn't, a mentor isn't going to do that. If you're truly with a mentor, it's a meaningful connection, and you are not meaningfully connected to somebody who's mean to you. So reframe that in your mind. We all have somebody that we might have mislabeled, right? Relabel that person as just a toxic individual, and then leave it at that, step away and go find somebody who's not. If a person becomes toxic, whether it's a mentee or a mentor, that is not a mentoring relationship. It just isn't. So if you're feeling that way, then say to yourself, I'm going to end this, or I'm going to just label it as what it is. Because a lot of people get matched at work and they don't feel that they can end that. So I say, do whatever you feel like you need to do for work, but that's not your mentor. In your mind, label it, that's not my mentor. Go in and talk about the weather if you have to, because you're forced to at work, whatever that is. But no, that's not your mentor. So it is a sticky thing at work if they match you up with somebody and you don't feel that you can say, I want a new mentor. If you feel like you can't be yourself and that person is maybe criticizing you or being mean in some way, if you can then say to yourself, I'm going to go get a mentor on my own, they don't have to know that, just go do it, then label that in your mind, and that criticism won't feel as big a sting.
So basically, you have to generally, number one, respect your mentor. And the mentor has to respect the mentee as well. It's a reciprocal, but you also have to kind of have the personality where you don't clash with each other. Yeah, that's important, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to be mentored by them because they're making XYZ amount of money. And then they realize that they're not getting anywhere because, number one, their personalities don't mesh together. They're hitting themselves against a brick wall. And I think that so many people are focused on the dollar signs that they're not focused on what they're actually getting out of the relationship.
Yeah, that goal is wrong. You can want the dollar sign. How many times have you been somewhere and you've met somebody or people, right? Are you friends with everybody you meet? No, like 10 people can walk in front of you and you might only say, I like one, maybe you like none. Or maybe you say, I don't want to have lunch with any of these people. Well, that's the same with mentors. You might admire what somebody does. I might see someone with a really snazzy outfit or they look really put together. And then I meet them and I'm like, ew, that is something that we all go through. That can happen in the workplace too. And we can say to ourselves, well, I'm going to tough it out with this mentor, but you're really not in a mentoring relationship if you don't respect them, or if they're mean to you, or if there's something like that going on. So what I say is make the goal something that you're looking within getting the information, the skill, the value, the tradition, whatever it is that you're looking for, the expertise. It has to come through a meaningful connection. So if you come across 5 people and you do not have any way that you feel you can connect with them, they're not going to be your mentor.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You can say, I am not going to get mentored by that person. Maybe you network with them. Maybe you do something that's really putting up a lot of boundaries so that you can still interact with them, but not in the same, more intimate way.
That is so true. Well, I hate to end this conversation, but our time is almost up. Is there one thing that either you talked about that you want to reiterate, or maybe something we didn't talk about that you want to say? The floor is yours before we talk about where people can find you.
I want to just let everybody know you do not need a title. You do not need a degree. Every single one of us is a mentor. Every one of us is a mentee. If you just start to look at those who've helped you and those who you care about around you, I bet if you looked at those 5 things that require you to be a mentor in a mentoring relationship, you'll see that you're making impact in the world all over the place and you just didn't realize it. So thank your mentor. Anytime you have a mentor that is out there who's helped you, thank them, because that's one way that you will remember and it'll solidify it for you and you'll go do it again and again and again.
Yeah. And where can people find you?
You can find me, first of all, go ahead and check out the Mentor Project, which is mentorproject.org. You're not going to find me there as much as you used to, but go, it's a great place. You can find the Mentorship Edge anywhere you buy books. You can find me at Deborah Heiser mentorship.com. And you can find me. I write for Psychology Today on the Right Side of 40 and the blog, The Right Side of 40 as well.
Oh, woo. I love the right side of 40. I love that because I'm on the right side of 40 as well. So, Deborah, thank you for coming on. First of all, thank you for writing the book because it opened up my eyes for mentorship. I mean, I was listening to it as I was doing other things in my house, and I would have to stop and say, "Ooh, I need to highlight this. Ooh, I need to highlight that." Because it was like such a great book and such a great way of showing what mentorship is and what it isn't. Because I think a lot of people think that it's coaching and it's because you have all this now where people are life coaches and coaching for confidence and coaching for speaking and coaching for, coaches are coming out of
I know.
all over the place now, but it's not that. It's about finding that authentic connection where people are giving from each other and they're giving back to each other. And it's not about monetary value.
You're so right. And I want to just thank you for mentoring me and everybody else with your podcast that you have and with your blog.
Thank you. I've never had someone tell me that, but thank you very much. That means a lot to me. So guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere where Deborah, you can find Deborah as well as find the Mentorship Edge. And until next time, bye guys. Well, friends, that's it for today's chat here in the Blog Cabin. I hope something we shared sparked a thought, warmed your heart, or gave you a little encouragement for your journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a new conversation. And if you'd like to spread a little love, leave a review or share this episode with someone who needs it. Remember, this little cabin isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a space where we show up, share stories, and shine a little light together. Until next time, keep living with hope, keep anchoring yourself in love, and never forget, you've got a seat saved here in the Blog Cabin. Take care, friends, and I'll see you in the next episode.